Chapter 14. Crimson in the Dark, Night Blind, Divine Purpose. The snow and wind had only worsened since the ascent to the mountain a few days ago. The air was thick with swirling blurs of white that danced chaotically in the blackness, making every step he took an uncertain one. The very air he breathed stung at his face and carved at his lungs. But Killian was on a mission. He had several broken bones. There was no doubt about it. The bruising and swelling on his arm and ribs had given that away. The tumble off the cliff almost 48 hours ago had left him weak and almost killed him, but somehow, miraculously, he'd landed in a bush and a bed of snow that cushioned most of the fall. Most of it. Now Killian was carving his way through fresh snow like a plow through a field. He had found footsteps in the snow, small ones. It was them. It had to be. He pushed through the white veil with his cloak sinking into the snow with each step like a wave cresting and falling with the tide. He'd give anything to be on the southern coast of Alara in the warm sands. Anything to be out of this goddamn cold. Anything to take off his armor, but it was the only thing keeping him warm. He breathed into his palms, rubbing the fleeting warmth into his skin unsuccessfully. "I am a knight of Alara," he whispered to himself. "I'll be damned if I let a soldier of rain take two of the children of the Empire from in front of me," he said, his eyes on the ground. He could see the larger, heavier gait of another soldier beside the children's prince. They were stolen, whisked away. They were in danger. But Killian was alive. "I will find you, little ones," he continued, his words warming him more than any cloak. Killian's armor gleamed suddenly as through a break in the clouds. Altarian shone like a gem, lighting the way before him. What little he could see. If that wasn't a sign from the gods. He carried on, his breathing slow, controlled. He moved with a speed and precision that only a soldier could muster. Within a couple hours, he saw a faint glow in the darkness. He had stumbled on a camp by accident. There was what remained of a campfire that had now gone out, and even the remains of a pyre. The remnants of the dead were still sprawled out atop the wooden wreckage. Killian made sure to stay quiet, as he was unsure of how far off the soldiers that had made this camp their home were. Within a few minutes, he found tracks. They must have carried on. He sighed, and sitting on a stump, he took a moment to readjust his bandages and take a drink of water. Sitting there, he studied the pyre and the bodies therein. Armor of rain. Armor of the enemy. The fire was still warm, and everywhere he looked there were tracks. Tracks heading in the same direction as him. "Shit," he spouted. He tossed the remaining water back, and without another word, he picked up his things and ran off down the same hill Mira had followed after Theron into the darkness and into the forest. Within the hour, Killian crested a snow-covered hill and came across a camp of about a half-dozen tents that had been lazily protected. From his vantage point, he could see the entire layout. This late into the night, most of the enemy were asleep, and only a few guards rotated in the darkness. He could see their torches moving like stars in the shadows. Killian had spent much of his youth in the woods. As a soldier, he grew to know the woods like a second home. He knew that while the torches provided much-needed warmth and protection from predators, it also made them night-blind. Like a streak of metal, Killian skirted the edge of the forest, slinking from trunk to trunk. He wasn't sure if the children were here or not, but he had to look. Where else could they be? He spotted his first target, a sentry that walked into his field of view, whispering to himself. One well-thrown dagger sang through the whistling wind and dropped him to the snow without another sound. Killian crouched, approaching the body, grabbing the knife that had embedded in the soldier's forehead. With a soft sucking sound, he had his dagger. A moment later, on the other side of camp, the other sentry went down. Then another. Within a few minutes, all the sentries were dead. With labored breaths, Killian shook his head in disbelief. He scoffed at how easy it was to pick them off, his heart racing. How could this be the same enemy that had descended on his soldiers like a plague? They had attacked his peaceful caravan, murdered his fellow countrymen, nobles of the court, and he was starting to believe they had killed the children too. He tried to steady his breathing and closed his eyes. He saw the kids' faces etched into the back of his eyelids. He thought of those precious moments before the battle, the way Rhea had smiled at him. They didn't deserve this. He opened his eyes, anger seeping into his thoughts and spreading like fire in his veins. There he was, staring down a sleeping enemy, safe in their tents. He walked past the tents like a specter at the edge of the torchlight, shadow and crimson in the dark. He could see the soldiers buried beneath furs, unaccustomed to the cold. Outsiders. Murderers. By the end of the hour, the camp was ablaze and the smell of burning linen and flesh filled the cold night air. A few fireballs had done all the work for him, and he had reveled in their screams. Then, when he was the only one left alive, he wept. Killian dropped to his knees, pounding his fists into the cold snow until his body stopped him. Exhaustion, pain, and sadness that weighed on him finally took him, and he collapsed. When he finally came to, he laid there on his back, surrounded by embers, wishing they would consume him. His arm was throbbing and his leg felt as if it was on fire. When the spell that dulled the pain had faded, there was only adrenaline, and now, that adrenaline that had kept him going was long gone and pain had replaced the fire in his heart. Frozen in the mountains. Could be worse, I guess, he whispered to the wind. Far above him, the clouds broke and he could see the great emerald planet for a moment. Forgive me for my sins, he begged quietly. He forced his eyes shut and waited for death. Forgive me. Forgive me for my sins. Forgive me for my sins, he begged quietly. He forced his eyes shut and waited for death. He heard the dagger before he saw it. He instinctively opened his eyes in time to see a blade coming toward him. He rolled to the side with a single quick motion, the attacker now perpendicular to him with a dagger buried in the snow, and in one swift motion Theron unsheathed the sword and drove it between the metal plates of the armor right under the armpit. It sunk in with a crunch. The attacker, gurgling, slumped forward, reaching out and grabbing him by the shoulder as if still trying to fight. They rolled over, exposing their front to the sky, and that's when Theron saw a young woman with fire golden hair. You are my enemy, she said. He removed her helmet, her hair fell out in a thick braid. She stunk of grime and blood, and the gods only know how long she'd been marching. Be at peace, he said to her. The others. My brother, she started weeping. She reached into her armor and retrieved a letter that was now stained with blood. Killian placed a gauntleted hand on her cheek and shushed her. Please give this to him, for my family. Your brother, he's with your company? He asked. She nodded. Where is your brother? He cooed questioningly, prying. North Deermut Forest. South of Portis, the woman responded, a gurgling replacing her words now. Killian nodded. So there were more of them. He should have seen it. The force that had ambushed them was much larger in size. And like a fool, he had let anger and grief cloud his thoughts. If there were more troops, could the kids be alive? How long ago? He felt a rekindling in his heart that felt foolishly like hope. A few hours, she replied again, her eyes trying to focus on him. I will get this to your brother. I'm sorry, she cried. He placed her head in his lap and stroked her head. He held her in the snow as she cried. "You have nothing to apologize for, soldier," he whispered to her. "Go to your god. I am forgiven." And her body went still. He buried her beneath the nearest tree, marking her grave with a few stones, and tossed her note into the flames of the ruined camp that still burned. For their attack, there would be no survivors. Without another glance back, he ran off into the northern woods. He had gone no more than a few hundred feet when he picked up more tracks, dozens of them. He came across a cave entrance and some frozen corpses outside. He came across a great oak and a cold fire. He followed the tracks, his strength returning like some divine purpose, and then like a sign, no more than a couple miles away, a blue light lit up the forest. Without hesitation, Sir Killian took off in its direction.